Hey student, watch this video and learn the difference between prefer, and would rather. Coming up. Hey friends, Teacher Prix here to help you talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. First of all, thank you so much for joining me on another English lesson. If it's your first time here, thanks for giving me an opportunity to teach you. Make sure to subscribe because I have many different kinds of English lessons, and from Monday to Friday, I'm here to teach you something new. Now, before I dive into the content, today I'm going to talk about prefer, and would rather. The situations when you're going to use them, if there is any difference between them. That's all you're going to study in tonight's lesson. I want to invite you, before I dive into the content, to download my free ebook. The link is in the description of this video. Basically, this ebook talks about 5 different strategies to help you better understand and talk to people in English, native or non-native speakers. And after you download the free ebook, every week you will be getting a different email from me, an exclusive lesson if you join. Now, prefer. Guys, I will start with the more basic ones and then I will move on to the more complicated ones. But there you will see that there's not a lot of difference between them, okay? That they're very specific. But starting with the general one, okay? I can use prefer, just the verb prefer. I prefer, you prefer, he, she prefers. Plus to, so the next verb will be in the infinitive form, plus to. Or I can use prefer plus the verb ing. I prefer to study, or I prefer studying. When I use this structure, I am talking about general preferences, nothing specific, okay? I prefer to study. I prefer to study in the morning. I prefer studying in the morning, okay? I'm just talking about general preferences, okay? This is a very important aspect of prefer. That means you can use this in many general conversations. It's an easy choice, okay? Now, there are more situations when you can use prefer. The next explanation I have here is prefer something to another, okay? This is a different structure. Let me show you an example. I prefer, when it comes to English, I prefer listening to writing. When I say this to you, I'm telling you that I prefer listening, not writing, okay? Writing is not my favorite activity. If I have to choose listening and writing, I prefer listening to writing, okay? So when I use this, I prefer blah, blah, to blah, blah, I'm saying that I prefer the number 1, not the second one, okay? I prefer X, not Z, okay? That's my preference. So I prefer, oh my God, my hair. I prefer this shirt to the one I was wearing. Well, I prefer this blouse to the one I was wearing yesterday, okay? So I'm showing you with this phrase that I prefer number 1, not the second. So the thing that comes after to is the one that I don't prefer. So I prefer blah to blah, blah. In English, if I'm talking about studying English, I prefer listening to writing. I prefer listening. I like to do listening exercises when I'm studying. Writing? Yeah, not so much. That's not really my favorite activity. How about you? What do you prefer when it comes to studying English? Do you prefer listening to writing as like me, or do you prefer writing to listening? Let me know here in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, in the comments. Now, I can also use I prefer to blah, 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 rather than. This is a structure, okay? It'll basically give the same idea as I prefer blah, blah to blah, blah. I prefer to drive rather than take the bus. So when you go to work, do you prefer to drive rather than take the bus? Or do you prefer to take the bus rather than drive? Let me know. Some people prefer to take the bus because then they can relax, they can listen to music, they can study. And if you're driving, you have to pay attention. You cannot really do anything else, okay? I prefer to live in the city rather than in the countryside, okay? I prefer to live in the city to the countryside, all right? So this is a very similar idea. So here I just repeated, I prefer something to another. It's an option that you have. So here I'm just talking about prefer, okay? I prefer blah blah to something else. I prefer to study English rather than study Italian. To be very honest, English is my favorite language, so I prefer to study English rather than Italian. That is true, okay? So you prefer one, not the other, okay? I prefer to something rather than the other thing, okay? Now, if you paid attention, the explanation is very basic. Students tend to confuse this, but there's not a lot of information about them, okay? At least not for your level. Would prefer. When I use would prefer, I'm not really talking about general, broad things, okay? I am talking about something specific, a specific situation, something that I want in a specific situation, in a specific conversation. So tell me, would you prefer coffee or tea? Tea, please. Okay, coffee, please. Should we take the bus? Not really. I'd prefer to get a cab. You know, I think it's better. We'll save time. You know, if we take the bus, we might get traffic. I don't know. I think it's better if we take a cab. You may get a cab. You may get traffic if you take a cab, but hey, we don't know. So here, should we take the bus? This is a specific conversation. I'm not just talking about my preferences about something. No, I am in a specific conversation. Someone asked me a specific question, and now I am sharing my preference to that specific conversation. Okay, so that's the difference when I use prefer and would prefer. So I'd prefer to stay home tonight rather than go out. Okay? Is that okay with you? So maybe your friend or your best friend or your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, they ask you, hey, how about we go to the movies? Well, not right now, because right now there's no movie theater that is open, at least not in Brazil. Everything's closed because of you know what. We can't talk about that here. But let's say I'm having a conversation. So here I say, you know what, babe? I'd prefer to stay home tonight rather than go out. So I prefer to stay home, not to go out. So I'd prefer to stay home rather than go out. So it is possible to combine both. Remember that when I use rather than is with the idea of not this, okay? Instead of. So I'd prefer to stay home, not go out, rather than go out, okay? With this particular structure, I don't use ing. I would prefer drinking coffee. I would prefer staying home. No, it's to. I would prefer to take a cab rather than the bus. I would prefer to stay home rather than go out. So with this particular structure, would prefer, unlike prefer, no ing, okay? I prefer studying, I prefer to study. So here in this situation, the main difference is I'm talking about something specific. It's a specific conversation, and I am indicating a specific preference for that conversation, for that particular conversation. Okay? And hey, if you're enjoying this lesson, as usual, I ask you to support the channel. When you hit the like button, YouTube understand that this is a good lesson, that this is nice and it's going to help other people. So make sure to smash that like button and share this lesson with your friends on your social media. Now, would rather, would rather. Here's the interesting thing, okay? Would rather and would prefer can be used to give the same idea. Okay, you can go for it. I would rather, I would prefer, it's fine. The difference is the structure. With would rather, I cannot use to. I would rather to go. No, okay? With prefer, you have. I would prefer to stay home. But with rather, I would rather stay home. So the idea itself, the translation, let's put it this way, is the same. But the structure is different. So I would prefer to take a cab. But with rather, I would rather take a cab. No to. I use the verb in the infinitive form, but without to. No to anymore. Goodbye to. Would you rather, if I want to use a verb here, would you rather drink, would you rather have tea or coffee? Would you rather drink some tea or coffee? Coffee, please. So would you rather, if I have a verb here, if I want to say a verb, because in this case I wouldn't necessarily need to include the verb, but would you rather live in Brazil or in another country? Priscilla, I'd rather live in Brazil because Brazil is amazing, good weather, it's very good, it's sunny here, okay? If you are using that different structure, Janaína, then yes, rather than. I prefer, let's go back there. I prefer to stay home rather than go out, okay? So instead of. So with this meaning, then you have to say rather than, okay? But here, would rather is a different idea, okay? It's the same idea of I would prefer, okay? So moving on. Would rather negative form. If you want to make the negative form of would rather, you just need to include the word not next to rather, okay? So I would rather not. Babe, I'm super tired. I would rather not go out tonight. Can we just watch Netflix and chill? Of course, I love Netflix. I love chilling. So that's the idea, okay? Now, one important thing here that I think I didn't mention. I can say I'd rather stay home than go out tonight. That's possible. Here, the structure is a little different because I'm not using prefer, I'm using rather. So in this case, since you asked, Janaína, in this case, I separate them because here I'm not using prefer. So I would rather stay home I would rather stay home than go out. So if you use the complete ones, I would rather stay home, then you can separate them, then go out. Okay, I don't want to go out, I prefer to stay home. But if you use the prefer, then you will have the rather than together and no would. Okay, and here, just a quick reminder, just repeating myself, the negative form is I'd rather not. And teacher, what's the difference in translation? No difference. I'd rather, I'd prefer, they will give the same idea, okay? Now, different structure. I can use would rather plus simple past. Yes, but when I use this structure, I'm not talking about past. I'm talking about present, okay? And hey, if you're watching this lesson and you think this is a little too complicated, it's probably because this is not appropriate to your level, okay? This kind of structure is a very nice, a very interesting structure, but this is not a basic structure. With the exception of I prefer to study, I prefer to go out, that's okay, but I would rather, I'd prefer, with these ideas, they are a little bit more complex. They would be more appropriate to intermediate, upper intermediate speakers, okay? Now, would rather plus past. I can use the structure would rather plus simple past to indicate that I prefer someone to do something. I want someone, okay? My preference is that you do something. But the idea is in the past. So here, hey, Priscilla, are you cooking? My sister, she comes home and says, hey, girl, are you cooking tonight? Aw, Pachi, I'd rather you made food tonight. You made dinner. So here, I'd rather You, I need the pronoun you, João, Maria, Francisco, the dog. I don't know. It depends on the conversation, okay? I'd rather you made dinner. So my sister asks me if I am cooking dinner, but I prefer her, not me. So I want her to do it. So I say, hey, you know what? I'd rather you made dinner tonight. I'm really tired. I'm not feeling so well. As I know my sister and I know that she doesn't cook, she would probably order takeout because she doesn't cook. And she can occasionally make rice and beans, maybe a steak, but I know that she would definitely order takeout, okay? Do you cook? What's your specialty? Let me know here in the comments. Hey, I'd rather negative form. I'd rather you didn't tell anyone about that. So maybe I tell you a secret. I tell you something very personal, very private, something that is happening to me, something that is making me a little sad, and I shared this with you. After I tell you the story, maybe I'm saying goodbye, hey, goodbye, I'll see you tomorrow. Then I can look at you and say, hey, you know what? I'd rather you didn't tell anyone about this because it's really private. So I won't feel comfortable if you do that. So here, I'd rather you didn't tell, even though it's in the past, the idea is in the present. So when I tell that to my friend, what I want to say is don't tell anyone. I don't want you to tell people what I told you. I don't want you to share this information with anyone, okay? So that's the idea of would rather plus past. Okay, now this is important. This is not a basic structure. As I told you, this is a more advanced structure that you can use in conversations. And to find the right context to use this structure will require a more advanced level. That's why I say that this is not so basic, okay? Other than that, my friends, thank you so much. I'm happy I was able to do a live lesson tonight. Thank you so much. Share this lesson with your friends. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I will see you tomorrow for another English lesson. Thank you, and bye-bye.